I'll leave you with nothing, you useless old woman." The words slithered from Amanda Miller's mouth like venom as she leaned across the polished wood table during the court recess. Her voice was low, but sharp enough to slice through the quiet buzz of attorneys shuffling papers. Amanda's eyes glittered with malice, her manicured nails drumming against the table in a rhythm of contempt. I sat straighter in my chair, lifted my phone, and smiled as sweetly as I could manage. "Your Honor," I called, raising my voice just enough for the judge to hear, "may I play a video from last night?" Amanda froze, her perfectly powdered face losing color faster than water down a drain. The bailiff's boots echoed against the tile as Judge Elizabeth Monroe glanced over her reading glasses. She was a stern woman in her 60s, the kind of judge who had spent decades watching families tear themselves apart over money and betrayal. "Mrs. Miller," she said firmly, "please return to your seat. We will address new evidence after the break." Amanda's mouth tightened, but she obeyed, heels clicking like gunshots across the floor. "My name is Jacqueline Miller. I am 70 years old, a widow, and for more than 30 years I owned a flower shop in town. People used to come to me for roses on Valentine's Day, daisies for birthdays, and lilies for funerals. I thought I understood people, thought I had an instinct for truth and sincerity. But as I sat in that courtroom facing my daughter-in-law, I realized how wrong I had been. Until 8 months ago, I believed Amanda was simply ambitious, a woman who liked nice clothes and fine restaurants. She had been married to my only son Liam for almost 10 years. I never loved her, but I tolerated her because Liam seemed happy, or at least he pretended to be. Everything changed the night the state police called. It was 2:17 in the morning on a Tuesday in March. I remember staring at the red glow of the digital clock, debating whether the pain in my chest was heartburn or something worse. At my age, every twinge feels like a warning. "Mrs. Miller," the young officer's voice had said through the phone, "this is Officer Bradley. I'm calling about your son, Liam." Those words will never leave me. Liam was careful, the opposite of reckless. He wore his seatbelt, serviced his car on schedule, never touched a drink if he was driving. But he traveled for work, always on the road between job sites. The officer explained that a semi-truck had run a red light at an intersection. Liam was gone instantly. By the time I reached the hospital, Amanda was already there, mascara streaking down her cheeks, clutching Liam's wedding band like a sacred relic. She collapsed into my arms with sobs that shook her whole body. For a fleeting moment, I believed we shared grief honestly. I held her like a daughter because my own heart was breaking in half. But grief reveals character, and in Amanda's case, it revealed greed. The funeral arrangements became our first battlefield. Liam would have hated fuss, yet Amanda insisted on extravagance. A $12,000 casket, a professional quartet, floral arches that looked more like a celebrity wedding than a memorial. "He deserves the best," she said, dismissing my protests. Liam had been practical, a man who could fix anything with duct tape and determination, but his widow wanted marble and silk. I gave in. I was too tired to argue. Grief makes you weak. 2 weeks later, we gathered in a lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Amanda sat tall and expectant, assuming she would inherit everything: house, savings, insurance. Her smug smile faltered as the attorney read the actual terms. "I leave my home to my mother, Jacqueline Miller, with the hope that she will find comfort there. My life insurance policy and investment accounts are to be divided equally between my wife, Amanda, and my mother, Jacqueline." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Amanda blinked once, twice, then forced a laugh. "There must be some mistake," she insisted. But there was no mistake. Liam had updated his estate 6 weeks before the accident. 6 weeks. Amanda's shock that day had been genuine, but what followed was calculated. 3 months later, while I was watering the roses Liam had planted for me, a courier handed me a thick envelope. A lawsuit. Amanda claimed I had manipulated my dying son into rewriting his will. And so here I sat, in a courthouse filled with strangers, facing a woman who had once cried on my shoulder and now wanted to strip me of everything my son had left. The bailiff called us back to order. Amanda shot me a final glance, her eyes promising war. I held my phone tighter. What she didn't know was that I had more than grief on my side. I had evidence that would make her wish she had never met my family. The morning of the funeral arrived gray and heavy, as if the clouds themselves understood what we were about to do. I woke before dawn, unable to shake the ache in my chest that had settled there since Liam's accident. My son had always been steady, dependable, the one who called every Sunday no matter how busy life became. Now the silence in my house felt unbearable. Amanda, however, seemed energized by the event. She had insisted on planning every detail, dismissing my suggestions as though I were an ignorant old relic. To her, this day was less about honoring Liam's life and more about staging a performance. I remember walking into the funeral home and gasping at the sight. A mahogany casket with gleaming brass handles sat beneath towering floral arches. The bill, I later learned, was $12,000. A string quartet warmed up in the corner, their instruments gleaming under the soft light. It looked like the setting for an elegant gala rather than the farewell of a man who would have preferred something simple, something genuine. "Jacqueline," Amanda said sharply, adjusting the sleeve of her black silk dress, "I hope you'll behave today. Liam deserves the best." "He deserved honesty," I muttered, though she pretended not to hear. Family and friends filtered in, murmuring their condolences. Many cast sympathetic glances my way, but their eyes lingered on Amanda. She cried theatrically, clutching tissues in her perfectly manicured hands. When she wasn't dabbing at her eyes, she was directing the staff, making sure every ribbon was straight, every candle perfectly aligned. I kept thinking of Liam's laugh, the way he could brighten a room with a single joke. This spectacle was not him. Yet I swallowed my anger because grief had already stolen too much energy from me. 2 weeks later, the reading of the will brought us all back together, this time in a quiet office with shelves of law books and the smell of stale coffee. Amanda swept in, confident, wearing a dark green dress that likely cost more than my entire wardrobe. She smiled at me, a smile that said she expected victory. The attorney, an older man with thinning hair, cleared his throat and began, "The last will and testament of Liam Miller." His voice was calm, professional. Amanda crossed her legs, folded her hands in her lap, and tilted her chin as though she already knew the contents by heart. "I leave my home to my mother, Jacqueline Miller, with the hope that she will find comfort there." The words hung in the air like thunder. I felt my breath catch, though I had no idea what Liam had planned. Amanda's smile faltered. "My life insurance policy and investment accounts are to be divided equally between my wife, Amanda Miller, and my mother, Jacqueline Miller." The silence that followed was unbearable. I stared at the attorney, trying to process what I had just heard. Half of everything? And the house my house now? Amanda blinked rapidly, then forced a laugh. "That cannot be right. There must be some mistake." "Liam promised me," he said, "everything would come to me." The attorney shook his head. "There is no mistake. Mr. Miller updated this will 6 weeks prior to his death. All documents are properly signed and witnessed." 6 weeks. The phrase rang in my ears. Liam had made these changes so recently, without telling either of us. Why? Amanda's face flushed, her hands tightening into fists. For the first time, I saw fear behind her polished exterior. She had expected it all. The house, the savings, the insurance. She had built her life on that assumption. We left the office in silence. Outside, Amanda turned to me, her eyes blazing. "You think you've won, don't you? But this isn't over." I said nothing. My heart ached too much to fight. In the weeks that followed, I tried to focus on the garden Liam had planted. The roses bloomed stubbornly, as though refusing to give in to grief. I watered them, whispering little prayers, hoping they might somehow carry my love to him. But peace did not last. 3 months after the funeral, while I bent over the rose bushes, a courier appeared at my gate. E handed me a thick envelope stamped with legal warnings. My hands shook as I opened it. Amanda was suing me. The accusations were bold: undue influence, fraudulent manipulation, exploiting a vulnerable man during his illness. According to Amanda, I had somehow convinced Liam to rewrite his will, tricking him into leaving me half of everything. I sank onto the porch steps, the papers trembling in my lap. My son had trusted me, had made his choices deliberately. Now his widow wanted to paint me as a scheming old woman. I lifted my eyes to the horizon, the garden blurring through my tears. Amanda had declared war, and I knew she would not stop until she took what she believed belonged to her. But she had underestimated me. I was not just a grieving mother. I was Jacqueline Miller, and I had survived 70 years of hardship. I would not let her destroy what Liam had entrusted to me. The envelope sat heavy in my lap, its weight far greater than paper should ever carry. Inside were words designed to cut, words that accused me of manipulating my own son in his final weeks. According to Amanda's lawsuit, I had preyed upon Liam's fears about his health, whispering poison into his ear until he rewrote his will in my favor. Fraud, undue influence, exploitation of a vulnerable man. I had read those phrases again and again until the letters blurred. Each accusation felt like a dagger, stabbing at both my integrity and Liam's memory. My son had been strong, competent, and deliberate in every decision he made. The idea that he could have been tricked by me, his own mother, was an insult to the very man he was. I called Patrick Collins the next morning. Patrick was 74, a family friend, and the lawyer who had helped settle my husband's estate years earlier. He answered on the third ring, his voice steady, reassuring. "Jacqueline," he said, "I'm so sorry you're going through this. Bring the papers to my office. We'll review everything together." His office smelled faintly of leather and old coffee. Law books lined the shelves, their spines cracked from decades of use. Patrick adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and spread the lawsuit across his desk, his brow furrowed as he read. "She's accusing you of manipulating Liam after his diagnosis," he said slowly. 6 weeks before his death, he changes his will. To Amanda, that timing looked suspicious. I bristled. Liam was fine. His diabetes was under control. His doctor even said so. He wasn't vulnerable. "I believe you," Patrick said, raising a calming hand. "But civil court isn't about what's true beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's about what's more likely than not. Amanda doesn't need to prove you manipulated him completely, only that her version seems plausible. The unfairness of it nearly knocked the breath from me." "So she lies, and I lose?" Patrick shook his head. "Not necessarily. We need to show evidence, something concrete that supports Liam's state of mind and his reasons for changing his will. Do you have any idea why he might have made those changes?" I thought back to our last Sunday dinners. Liam had seemed thoughtful, even restless. He asked about trust, about how I had known his father truly loved me. At the time, I assumed he was grappling with his diagnosis, but now those questions took on a darker meaning. "I don't know," I admitted, my throat tight. But Liam wasn't confused. He knew exactly what he was doing. Patrick tapped his pen against the desk. "Then that's the story we'll prove." Over the next weeks, Amanda's campaign of destruction gathered speed. She hired Patricia Grimm, a sharp-tongued attorney with a reputation for turning family disputes into public theater. Newspapers carried whispers of the case: grieving widow versus manipulative mother. Strangers I passed in the grocery store seemed to look at me differently, as though the headlines had already condemned me. At night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, hearing Amanda's voice in my head, "I'll leave you with nothing." Still, I refused to crumble. Each morning I walked the garden Liam had planted, whispering promises to him. "I'll fight for you, son. I won't let her twist your memory." Patrick began preparing me for deposition. "They'll ask about every Sunday dinner, every conversation with Liam," he warned. "Answer truthfully but carefully. Amanda's lawyer will twist your words if she can." The day of the deposition arrived like a storm cloud. I sat across the long table from Amanda and her attorney. Amanda wore a black suit and pearls, her expression the picture of solemn grief, but her eyes sparkled with something colder than tears. "Mrs. Miller," Patricia began smoothly, "how often did you visit your son in the months before his death?" "Every Sunday," I said, steadying my voice. "It was our tradition." "And during these visits, did you discuss his marriage?" "Sometimes." Patricia leaned forward. "Did you ever suggest to Liam that his wife was only interested in his money?" I hesitated. The truth was painful but unavoidable. I may have expressed concerns. Amanda's lips curved in triumph. Patricia smiled like a shark sensing blood. "Concerns about what, specifically? About whether she truly loved him, or just the lifestyle he provided?" The room grew colder. My honesty, meant as a mother's worry, had just been painted as evidence of manipulation. Amanda dabbed her eyes with a tissue, shaking her head as though heartbroken. When it was over, Patrick touched my hand. "Don't lose hope. A deposition isn't the whole case. We'll find something stronger." But as I walked out of that office, Amanda's voice echoed behind me, soft but certain. "This is only the beginning, Jacqueline. I will take everything from you." I clenched my fists, forcing back the tears. She thought I was fragile, too old to fight. She had forgotten the truth. I had lived through 70 years of storms. I knew how to stand my ground. And though I did not yet know how, I promised myself I would uncover proof that Amanda was not the grieving widow she pretended to be. Proof that Liam had acted out of clarity, not confusion. The war for my son's legacy had only just begun. The summer air hung thick and restless when Jonathan Green knocked on my door. He was 16, lanky, with a mop of brown hair that always seemed one gust of wind away from collapse. I had seen him often in his grandparents' yard, flying that drone of his despite endless complaints from the neighborhood association. "Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice cracking with nerves, "I think you need to see something." I frowned, wiping soil from my hands. I had been pruning Liam's roses, their blooms stubbornly beautiful despite the heat. "What is it, Jonathan? Your drone crash again?" He shook his head and held up his phone. His hands trembled the way mine did sometimes when arthritis flared. "No, ma'am. I think this is important." I followed him to the porch, lowering myself onto the swing as he tapped the screen. Grainy night vision footage filled the display. At first I saw only the outline of my own backyard. The fence, the dim glow from the porch light I had forgotten to switch off. Then, movement. A woman stepped into view, her blonde hair unmistakable even in the fuzzy glow. Amanda. My heart kicked against my ribs. She wasn't alone. A man joined her, his arms sliding around her waist. Even with the poor resolution, the intimacy was undeniable. Their heads bent close, lips meeting in a kiss that sent a rush of anger through my veins. Jonathan shifted awkwardly. I wasn't spying, honest. I was just testing the night vision. But when I looked at the footage later and saw her, well, I thought you should know. I forced myself to breathe, to steady my voice. "Who is the man?" Jonathan squinted at the screen. "That's Alan Parker. My mom gets our car insurance through his office. I've seen him around." The name meant little to me at first, but when I typed it into the internet that night, my breath caught. Alan Parker was not just any man, he specialized in life insurance policies. The pieces began to align like jagged shards falling into place. Amanda's extravagant funeral demands, her shock and fury at the will, her determination to challenge it in court, and now, a secret late-night meeting with a man whose livelihood revolved around insurance payouts. I leaned back in my chair, pressing the phone to my chest. Could it be that Liam had discovered something? That his decision to change his will had been his final attempt to shield me from this betrayal? "Jonathan," I said carefully, "I need you to keep this quiet. Do not tell anyone, not even your parents. Make copies of this video, put it on a flash drive, email it to yourself, anything. And for heaven's sake, don't delete the original from your drone." His eyes widened, but he nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am." When he left, I sat alone in the darkened kitchen, the weight of revelation pressing down on me. For the first time since Liam's death, I felt something stronger than grief. I felt resolve. The next morning, I brought the video to Patrick. He adjusted his glasses and watched it 3 times, his face unreadable. "This is significant," he admitted, "but we need to be cautious. A court will want proof that this relationship existed before Liam's death. Otherwise, Amanda will claim it began after he passed." I nodded, though frustration simmered in my chest. "So even if she was kissing another man the night before the funeral, it might not matter?" "It matters," Patrick said, his tone firm. "It matters to a jury's sense of truth, and it matters to the judge. But for the legal heart of the case, we need more. Think, Jacqueline. Did Liam ever hint that he suspected Amanda of something?" I closed my eyes, recalling our last dinners. His questions about trust, his melancholy smile as he lingered over photo albums, the way he had pressed his grandmother's jewelry box into my hands 2 weeks before the accident, telling me to keep it safe. "He knew," I whispered. He didn't say it out loud, but he knew. Patrick nodded slowly. "Then we follow that trail. The phone records, financial documents, anything that shows Amanda and this Alan Parker were connected before Liam changed his will. The more we establish a timeline, the stronger your defense becomes." I left his office with the video secure in my bag, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Amanda thought she could intimidate me into surrender, thought age made me weak, but she had underestimated me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Liam's old photo albums spread before me. My son smiled from every page, a reminder of the life he had built with kindness and steady hands. I traced his handwriting on the notes he had tucked into birthday cards, words of love that now felt like armor. "Amanda may have money and lawyers," I whispered into the quiet, "but I have you, Liam, and I have the truth." For the first time since his death, I allowed myself to believe that justice was possible. The video was only the beginning, but it was enough to spark a fire in me. And once lit, a mother's fire does not go out. The video from Jonathan's drone had given me a spark, but a spark alone could not win a case. Amanda had an attorney who thrived on spectacle. If I wanted the truth to prevail, I needed more, something that would transform suspicion into proof. So I began to dig. At 70 years old, my knees ached and my eyesight wasn't what it used to be, but I had patience, and patience is its own weapon. I started with the only thing I still had access to: Liam's phone records. He had been old-fashioned about technology. He didn't care much for apps or cloud storage, but he had insisted on keeping our family's phone plan under one account to save money. After his death, the account was still in my name. I spent hours scrolling through months of itemized calls and text logs. The patterns jumped out quickly. Amanda had been in regular contact with Alan Parker not for weeks, but for months, 8 months to be exact, beginning almost immediately after Liam's diabetes diagnosis. Late-night calls, daily text messages, numbers that appeared with relentless consistency. I copied every page, every timestamp, and highlighted them until my fingers cramped. Then I sat back and let the truth wash over me. Amanda had not stumbled into Alan's arms after Liam's death, as she would surely claim. Their relationship had begun long before. The connection to insurance made my stomach twist. I remembered Alan's face from community events, the friendly agent with a modest office who seemed eager to sell policies to anyone who would listen. His name was suddenly everywhere, on Amanda's recent emails, on paperwork that arrived in the mail weeks after the funeral, even on a brochure I found stuffed into the glove compartment of Liam's car. I brought everything to Patrick. He spread the pages across his desk, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is good," he said. "Phone records don't lie. But look at this," he pointed to a cluster of dates. "These calls spike 6 weeks before Liam's death. That's the same time he changed his will." The room felt colder. "She was planning something," I whispered, "and Liam must have figured it out." Patrick leaned back, folding his hands. "We have the video. We have the phone records. But we need to know why Liam made those changes. If we can connect his decision directly to what he discovered about Amanda, it will crush her case." So I dug further. I requested bank records, sifting through every transaction. Amanda had begun withdrawing unusual amounts of cash 2 months before the accident. Large purchases appeared that Liam would never have approved: designer clothes, expensive dinners, even a down payment on a luxury car. Then there was the insurance. Liam's original policy had been for $240,000. Amanda had tried to raise it to $960,000. That figure sat like poison on the page. A fortune dangled like bait in front of a desperate woman and a struggling insurance agent. I stared at the numbers, fury and sorrow colliding inside me. My son had been reduced to a calculation, a payout waiting to be claimed. Patrick tapped the table. "Jacqueline, this paints a clear picture. Amanda wasn't grieving, she was preparing. But we still need Liam's voice in this. Something from him, not just circumstantial evidence." That night I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by folders, papers, and receipts. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I opened one of Liam's old notebooks, the one he used for repair projects around the house. In the margins, he had scribbled notes, reminders, supply lists, thoughts. My eyes blurred with tears as I read his handwriting. Trust is like a window. Once cracked, it never looks the same. Was he writing about Amanda? I closed the notebook and pressed it to my chest. Liam had known more than he had shared. He had been trying to shield me, even in his final months. In the weeks that followed, Amanda's side continued to build their narrative. Newspaper columns speculated about a grieving widow denied her rightful inheritance. Neighbors whispered. Some avoided me altogether, as though guilt could be contagious. But I refused to bend. Each new discovery added steel to my spine. Amanda could smear my name, but she could not erase the facts. The truth was buried in documents, in numbers, in records that spoke louder than crocodile tears. Patrick called me one evening after reviewing the files. "We're close, Jacqueline," he said. "This isn't just about defending you anymore. It's about exposing Amanda for who she really islanded." I looked out at the roses Liam had planted, their petals glowing faintly in the porch light. My son's presence lingered there, in every leaf and thorn. "Then we'll expose her," I said softly. "For Liam, for the truth." The fire inside me burned brighter than ever. The video and the records had given me a weapon, but I knew in my bones that something else was out there, something stronger. Liam had been deliberate. 2 weeks after I uncovered the phone records, Patrick called me with urgency in his voice. "Jacqueline," he said, "you'd better come to my office right away. I think I've found something in Liam's personal effects." My heart stuttered. I gathered my bag and drove in silence, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, Patrick was already seated behind his desk. He held a plain manila envelope as though it were a sacred relic. His expression was solemn, almost reverent. "This was returned by the insurance company along with Liam's belongings," he explained. "It was tucked inside his briefcase. The outside is marked, 'To be opened only if something happens to me.'" My throat closed. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Patrick hesitated. "Jacqueline, are you sure you want to read this now? Once you do, there's no going back." I nodded. I need to hear his words. Patrick carefully slit the envelope open and unfolded several pages of lined paper, written in Liam's familiar handwriting. His script was neat, measured, the same way he had always approached life. "Mom," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true." Tears blurred my vision. I pressed a hand to my mouth, willing myself to stay calm as Patrick read aloud. "I've discovered things about Amanda I can no longer ignore. For months, she's been meeting with Alan Parker, the insurance agent. I have proof of their calls and their late-night meetings. She insisted on increasing my policy from $240,000 to $960,000. That change set off alarms in my mind." Patrick paused to look at me. My chest ached, but I gestured for him to continue. "I cannot prove Amanda intends me harm, but I cannot dismiss the possibility either. I've updated my will to protect you, Mom. The house is now yours. The insurance is split evenly, so Amanda cannot run away with everything. Please do not blame yourself. Amanda fooled us both, but I refuse to let her take my entire legacy. If she contests the will, give this letter to Patrick. I trust him to defend you." The words blurred again as my tears fell, splattering the paper. My son had known. He had carried the weight of suspicion, of betrayal. Yet he had chosen not to confront Amanda directly. Instead, he had acted quietly, strategically, to protect me. Patrick folded the letter carefully. His own eyes glistened. "Jacqueline, this changes everything. This isn't just evidence. It's testimony from Liam himself. It proves he was competent, rational, and deliberate." I clutched the envelope to my chest. He was still protecting me, even in his final days. For the first time since the lawsuit began, hope flickered bright and strong. With this letter, Amanda's lies about manipulation would crumble. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the letter spread before me under the warm glow of the lamp. I traced Liam's handwriting, hearing his voice in my head. "Trust is like a window. Once cracked, it never looks the same." I whispered into the silence. "You were right, son. You knew, and you left me the truth." The following days blurred with preparation. Patrick consulted a handwriting expert to verify authenticity. The expert compared birthday cards, work memos, even grocery lists written by Liam, and confirmed the match without hesitation. We arranged to submit both the original and certified copies to the court. Amanda, of course, continued her performance in public. She posed as the grieving widow, whispering to reporters about her heartbreak. But the cracks in her mask were widening. Her eyes darted nervously whenever Alan's name surfaced. I watched from the sidelines, holding Liam's letter like armor. At night, I walked the garden, the roses glowing faintly in the moonlight. I thought about the boy who had once picked wildflowers for me on Mother's Day, the man who still called every Sunday, the son who now reached out from beyond the grave to shield me. Amanda had money, lawyers, and arrogance, but I had Liam's words, sealed and waiting for this very moment. For the first time, I felt ready. The showdown in court was coming, and with it the chance to expose Amanda's betrayal to the world. I folded the letter gently and whispered, "We'll do this together, Liam. You and me." The courthouse felt colder that morning, as though the very walls anticipated the storm about to unfold. I walked in wearing Liam's favorite color, a deep shade of blue, and carried his letter close against my chest. It was more than paper. It was his voice, his shield, his final act of love. Amanda arrived moments later. She wore a tailored black suit and pearls that gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights. Her expression was a careful mask of grief, but her eyes betrayed something else: nerves. She had expected to face a tired old widow. Instead, she would face the truth. Judge Elizabeth Monroe took her seat on the bench, her gavel tapping once for silence. "We will continue with the matter of the contested estate of Liam Miller," she said. "Counsel, you may proceed." Amanda's attorney, Patricia Grimm, wasted no time. She strode to the center of the courtroom, her voice honeyed with venom. "Your Honor, this case is about a manipulative mother who exploited her son's illness. 6 weeks before his untimely death, he drastically changed his will. Who benefited? Not his loving wife Amanda, but his mother, Jacqueline Miller." She turned toward me, her expression sharp. "This is not grief, Your Honor. This is greed. Mrs. Miller saw her chance and took it." The words stung, but I held my ground. When it was Patrick's turn, he rose slowly, his presence steady. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is not about manipulation. It is about a man who recognized a truth no one wanted to face. Liam Miller was a competent, thoughtful individual. He updated his estate plan because he had discovered something his wife would rather remain hidden." A murmur ran through the gallery. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. The first witness was Dr. Ruth Carter, Liam's endocrinologist. She testified calmly, explaining that Liam's diabetes had been well controlled. "He was in good spirits, optimistic about his treatment," she said. There was no indication of impaired judgment. Patricia tried to twist the testimony, suggesting that the diagnosis itself could have caused distress. Dr. Carter stood firm. Distress, perhaps, but confusion? No. Liam was clear-headed. Next came Liam's estate attorney, who confirmed that Liam had been deliberate, even secretive, about updating his will. He specifically requested that the changes remain confidential, the attorney explained. He said he wished to avoid unnecessary stress for his family. Amanda's composure slipped. She whispered urgently to Patricia, who waved her down. Then Patrick introduced the phone records. "These documents," he said, holding up the stack, "show months of communication between Amanda Miller and Alan Parker, beginning 8 months before Liam's death." The courtroom hushed. Amanda paled, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Patricia leapt to her feet. "Irrelevant." "Overruled," Judge Monroe said sharply. "Proceed." Patrick read the dates and times, the late-night calls, the constant exchanges. "These are not the habits of a grieving wife," he said. "They are the habits of a woman engaged in a secret relationship long before tragedy struck." Amanda shook her head, her voice rising. "That means nothing. Alan was just a friend." "Silence in the courtroom," Judge Monroe ordered. Patrick nodded toward the screen at the front of the room. "Your Honor, we also have video evidence." Jonathan's drone footage appeared, grainy but undeniable. The timestamp glowed across the bottom, 11:47 p.m., less than 14 hours before Liam's funeral. Amanda and Alan, locked in an embrace in my backyard. The courtroom went silent except for Amanda's strangled gasp. "That is not what it looks like," she blurted. "I was grieving. Alan was comforting me." Patrick did not raise his voice. He simply let the video play again, the damning image freezing on the screen. "Comfort," he said quietly, "is not usually measured in kisses." By now, Amanda's mask was shattering. Her face flushed, her hands shook. Patricia tried to object, but the damage was done. Patrick paused, then lifted the final envelope. "Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence," Liam Miller's own words. My breath caught as he unfolded the letter. The room seemed to shrink as Patrick read aloud. Liam's handwriting came alive. His suspicions, his discovery of Amanda's affair, her push for a $960,000 policy, his deliberate choice to protect me. Tears streamed down my face, but I held my chin high. The letter silenced every whisper, every doubt. When Patrick finished, the courtroom remained frozen. Judge Monroe leaned forward, her expression hard as stone. "Mrs. Miller," she said, addressing Amanda directly, "do you have any response?" Amanda's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The gavel struck once. "We will recess until tomorrow for closing arguments." I exhaled, my body trembling. It was not victory yet, but the tide had turned. Amanda had wanted to leave me with nothing. Instead, she now faced losing everything. The final day of the hearing dawned bright and clear, a sharp contrast to the storm of nerves inside me. I dressed carefully in a dark suit, pinning my late husband's small flag pin to my lapel. It was a reminder of the strength our family had carried through wars, illness, and hardship. Today, that strength would carry me through one more battle. Amanda entered the courtroom looking weary. Her tailored black suit was rumpled, her eyes ringed with shadows that no amount of makeup could conceal. She avoided my gaze, whispering fiercely to Patricia, as though sheer willpower could undo the evidence already laid bare. Alan Parker was nowhere to be seen. Rumors said he had been contacted by investigators and was already seeking a deal for himself. Judge Elizabeth Monroe struck the gavel. "We will now hear closing arguments." Patricia rose first, her words brittle and rushed. "Your Honor, grief makes people do strange things." Mrs. Amanda Miller loved her husband. Any contact with Mr. Parker after his death was part of her struggle to cope. As for the phone records, they proved nothing more than friendship. And the letter? She paused dramatically. "It cannot be cross-examined. It may reflect paranoia more than reality. We must not let suspicion replace justice." Her performance was polished, but the conviction was gone. The weight of the evidence pressed against her every word. Patrick stood slowly, allowing silence to stretch across the room before he spoke. "Your Honor, this case has always been about truth. Not the image of grief Amanda has performed, but the truth Liam Miller himself uncovered. He discovered his wife was involved with another man months before his death. He discovered she was pushing for a $960,000 policy. And he acted. He updated his will, reduced her access, and left clear instructions in his own hand. That is not the behavior of a manipulated man. That is the behavior of a son protecting his mother." He held up the letter, his voice steady. "Liam Miller's words are more than evidence. They are a man's final testimony. And they confirm what the records, the video, and the witnesses have already shown. Amanda Miller is not the victim here. She is the deceiver." The courtroom was silent, except for the scratching of the clerk's pen. Judge Monroe leaned back, her expression unreadable. "I will render my decision after a brief recess." The minutes that followed felt like hours. I sat with my hands folded, Liam's letter resting between them like a prayer. Across the aisle, Amanda chewed her lip until the gloss smeared, her confidence unraveling thread by thread. When the judge returned, the hush in the courtroom was absolute. "In the matter of the contested estate of Liam Miller," she began, her voice firm, "I find no evidence of undue influence, mental incapacity, or fraudulent manipulation. The will, dated 6 weeks prior to his death, is valid and shall be enforced as written." Relief washed over me so strongly I nearly wept aloud. But Judge Monroe was not finished. "Furthermore, given the evidence of questionable financial motives, the matter will be referred to the District Attorney's Office for review of potential insurance fraud and conspiracy. Mrs. Amanda Miller, you are advised to retain criminal counsel." Amanda's face crumpled, her mouth opening in a silent gasp. Patricia reached for her arm, but Amanda jerked away, staggering toward the door as though the weight of her own lies had finally crushed her. The gavel fell. Justice had spoken. Weeks later, the news spread. Amanda was arrested on charges of conspiracy and fraud. Alan Parker, desperate to save himself, cooperated with investigators. Their affair, their financial schemes, their late-night meetings, all of it came to light. As for me, I returned to the home Liam had left me. The roses he planted continued to bloom, stubborn and beautiful, their scent carrying across the yard on warm evenings. Every Sunday, I still set the table for two, and though the chair across from me sat empty, I spoke aloud as if Liam were there. "Your plan worked, son," I whispered one evening, holding his letter close. "You kept me safe." Jonathan still visited sometimes, showing me new drone footage, sunsets, migrating birds, the ordinary wonders of life. I always smiled, grateful that his small hobby had uncovered the truth. At 71, I finally felt peace. Amanda had tried to leave me with nothing, but instead, Liam had left me with everything that mattered: the house, the security, and above all, the knowledge that love endures beyond death. His final gift was not wealth, it was the truth, and the truth had set me free.